The St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre, August 24th, 1572. And what you have is this church becomes the signal church for them. It's a royal chapel. And Catherine de' Medici is pulling the strings. See, Catherine de' Medici married, she's Italian, the Midici family from Florence, powerful Midici family. She's from that family. And because of the intermarrying between royal families, in this case, a banking family that rose to a position of authority that would be similar to royalty, she is in an arranged marriage. She is married to Henry III of France. They have 3 sons. And these sons have a bad habit of dying young. And her husband, Henry III, had a bad habit of dying sort of young too. He loved jousting. He was known, Henri III, known as a great jouster. And so he would have jousting tournaments with various dukes. You know, of course, if you're a French duke, you don't unhorse your king. You know, so that's probably partly, it's like Nero with violin playing. You know, he won every time. You know, but Henry III, he was actually jousting with a Spanish count. And long story short, he gets unhorsed, his lance is shattered, and a huge sliver from his lance goes and embeds itself in his eye. 3 days of agony, he dies. Leaving his oldest son, his eldest was 16 at the time, Francis, now Francis II. Now, I know this gets really convoluted, but follow me because it's really relevant to the Reformation. They have an arranged marriage between another Catholic ally country, Scotland, right? Because Mary of Lorraine was married to James V of Scotland. And they had one child before James V very inconsiderately died. And that was a young girl, and they named her, so original, Mary again. There's all these Marys. She would go on to be, you want to guess it? Mary, Queen of Scots. She's living in France. Her mother's French. She's in the French court. She's in Amboise, in the Loire Valley. She's living the high life of French Renaissance, you know, wild party time. And she doesn't love this sickly 16-year-old who is now the king, but it's an arranged marriage, so she's married to the guy. Within 6 months, he dies. And Catherine de' Medici then has another young son. So she's basically going to function as the queen regent for a number of years, which was a great frustration to many French people because they have an Italian functionally as their queen. She's the queen regent, the queen mother, and these boys that are coming along as kings. Meanwhile, Mary is going to be called back to Scotland as a new widow, 18-year-old. The story is that she cried all the way back to Scotland from France because she's going to go to frigid, cold Scotland. Some of you just did the reverse of that, you know, came to Paris. And lo and behold, when she gets to Scotland, who does she meet? John Knox. Yeah, John Knox. John Knox, who has spent 5 years in Geneva, and Frankfurt, and other Protestant safe places on the continent, helping with the Geneva Bible, all those 300,000 commentary notes on the margins and all that. And she is a charmer. She's very attractive. She's in the royal family. She likes to flirt, and she likes to think that she can control men with her flirtations. And then she has an audience with John Knox, and she learns that that doesn't always work. It did not work in the case of John Knox at all. This isn't a Scotland tour, so I'll leave that for another time. So you've heard some of that before. But anyway, it helps you to connect how interconnected these royal families were. Back to Catherine de' Medici. She's in her office there at Chateau de Chenonceau. It's the magnificent bridge chateau across the Loire Valley. And that was actually built by Henry III after he marries in an arranged marriage, Catherine de' Medici, that's his wife, but he builds it, and it's all public knowledge. They didn't need tabloids in those days. Life was a tabloid in France in those days. And he builds Chateau de Chenonceau, one of the most photographed castles in France, for his mistress, Diane of Poitiers. And of course, there's not a good relationship between Diane of Poitiers and Catherine de' Medici. But as soon as her husband dies, what does Catherine de' Medici do? She drop kicks Diane of Poitiers out of Chateau Chenonceau and sets up her household there, for obvious reasons. She wants to assert her role over this mistress. But it's from there that she orchestrates the August 24th, 1572 Saint-Bartholomew's Day Massacre. And she arranges that, I'll show you from outside, that the Belle Marie, when it rings on the morning of August 24th, we just heard a bell ring, didn't we? I'm not sure if that was Marie or not, but everybody in Paris knew what Marie sounded like, and that began the slaughter. With the first to fall, we just saw over there, was Gaspard Coligny. So this is a very important church for those things, and some of you that have read The Betrayal, you know that there's episodes that take place in here. The clandestine meetings between agents of the king. All of this is very real. You know, I write fiction, but you know, it's historical fiction. The king and the doctors of the Sorbonne, the Noël Betas, who said we must expel this hateful doctrine of grace from Paris, they were doing it by hook or by crook. They were commissioning ne'er-do-wells to infiltrate the Huguenot ranks and then come and betray those who were in those ranks. God's people, the church and kingdom of God.